Stealing can be good, with context of course. Here the goal is to really study the reference, how it works, why it works the way it does, whether it be real life images or illustrations from your favorite artists, using them to create something, finding whatever that translates to in your art style or your workflow or whatever, with the end goal of improving. Essentially stealing like an artist, taking bits and pieces here and there to improve your work. But mind you, this is different from flat out copying or tracing. Your goal here is to learn. For this video, I'm going to be using my character as a model, Madame Naomi from my comic/manga series Apple Black, published and serialized in Saturday AM. Links to early chapters of my manga, or you can read it on our Saturday AM mobile app, along with our Shonen Jump type digital magazines, or purchase the first 2 volumes, volume 3 coming soon. Links to everything you could possibly need, including my social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff will be in the description below. But back to this video, I'm going to be using sassy Madame Naomi here as a model, and we're going to be improving our art, specifically our coloring here, using this reference. Now this approach and way of thinking can be applied to your digital art, your traditional art, and maybe in some cases your film. Before this video, we're going to be keeping it traditional, which is a little harder, but it's good to train your eyes with what we were trying to do here. And then I'm going to be using my Spectrum Noir markers, who are partners of Saturday AM. I may do a digital version of this video in the future because it might be easier using the eyedropper tool in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint to better understand the reference before us. But for now, we're keeping it track. I'm just going to have to use my naked eye to figure out what colors are before me. Before jumping into stuff like this, you kind of want to have a decent understanding of color theory, warm colors, cool colors, and just understanding colors in general, the color palette here, the color scheme here, and understanding how they interact with each other, how one blends from one side to the other, why this color is XYZ and why the other is ABC, and how they're able to be in the same piece, all of that. In the reference, you can see that the sky is pretty warm, everywhere is pretty warm. You got a really red tone overall, versus the pool where things are cool, that rhyme, yes, and give off a green hue. Yeah, I got bars. And essentially, you just want to see how everything kind of interacts with one another. And I want to take that and apply it to my actual coloring. Madame Naomi is a relaxed type of gal, so the setting and the overall piece, the illustration of her in the pool is very fitting. She drinks too much. But obviously, I'm going to make some changes, make things fit the actual world that I've built within my series Apple Black. I'm just studying the reference and applying what I've learned to my illustration. If this was digital, you might be able to pick out 5 colors and build a palette from that. But here, since we're kind of going with a naked eye, I'm picking out 2. Again, it's kind of like a dark burgundy red and then like a teal, light, cool green. And I'm just going with that. The green coming from the pool and then the warm coming from everywhere else, right? So the green's coming from the pool because there's also light within the pool, kind of making everything a little extra. So you kind of want to have an understanding of how the highlights hit certain objects and illustrations as well, and I'll be picking that from the reference. The reference just makes things a little easier for me to understand. I would have been able to do this illustration switching out the colors. Maybe instead of a red, it could have been orange, and then maybe instead of a teal green, it could have been something purpley or light purple or something like that. But understanding the way the colors interact with one another is the key thing I'm taking away here. But I'm just sticking with the original colors so you guys better understand what's going on. This is always a great way for you to improve as an artist, because it's not that straightforward to just watch a video or read some text and understand color and color theory. Color is very weird and hard to understand. In fact, there are a couple things that I still pick up to this day. I think the best way to learn is to still do all of that, watch all the videos, listen to your favorite artists and teachers and all of that, but also apply yourself and make finished work. And while doing that, you will pick up even more and you gain more experience, you gain more confidence to then create your own stuff and maybe not have to rely on reference much or at all. That's what works for me. Literally is the same approach to learning almost anything. I have to do it, maybe use reference to make sure I'm good at it, and compare back and forth with the reference to see how accurate I'm becoming. And the more I do it, I want to make sure I'm getting closer and closer to where I want to be, improving the accuracy of what I'm trying to create, improving the accuracy of my execution. I just keep doing it, iteration and repetition, until I don't need the reference anymore. It's how I learned how to draw hands, feet, body proportions, dynamic angles, drawing a face, girl, boy, list goes on. But bottom line is you actually have to get your hands dirty. I'll only briefly talk about me actually applying the colors with my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers and Classique markers, because I have other videos that go into more detail about that if you're interested. All the epiphanies I've ever gotten that improved my work greatly mostly came while I was creating. In the illustration here, it's rare that any part of the illustration would be completely black or completely white. It will usually have some kind of tone to it, and so even though she has white hair, I'm still going in with a very light red or a light pink just to mimic the effects of the surrounding. And we have Golden Gauntlet. Again, I'm going to do something on that just to give it a little more tone, because none of the colors would be in their original glory and completely saturated without having any effect from the surroundings. So the pool is doing one thing, creating the green highlights from below, and then the overall surrounding, the sky, everything else is kind of having a bounce light or some kind of light hitting all the objects with that warm tone. With the background here, I'm not going to be going in with any detail with the inking because I want a character here to be sharp, hence why I've given her outlines. But the rest of the background is kind of blurry, almost like real photography. Again, this is me taking some reference from the image as well, and so I'm not going to be putting line work on the image. I did a little bit of inking in the background for parts of where the character is in my world. She's kind of like on a roof in a pool. Very different from what's in the reference. Not too different, but different enough. So I'm just working accordingly. And so there is some plants on that roof. And I'm putting in some black ink just to emphasize that those parts are going to be really dark. Overall, when I scan in the illustration, we're going to make sure that I do some digital touching here and there to make sure that all the blacks are not fully black and have that tone of maybe slightly warm or cool, depending on what part of the illustration the black is in. Same with the whites, right? So like her white hair, like I just said, I'm giving it a hint or a tint of, red. Kind of like the skies. And then the skies, this is the fun part, we're going to try and see if we can blend that together. We're taking reference directly. We're using reference a lot here. So I'm going to make sure that I blend as best as I can with the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. Normally, sometimes you might want to lay down a colorless blender first and then go in with the markers. That way it's kind of wet and it just makes blending easier. The silhouette of like buildings in the background are like completely black as well. I'm not going in with ink with those. I'm actually going in with a black Spectrum Noir Illustrator marker. And with those, it's much easier to add some kind of red tint to them. And here you can see like a gradient where it's going from some kind of magenta, burgundy type color at the top, coming down to a warmer red. And then having dark shades in the sky to represent the dark clouds. You have to spend a lot of time making sure the sky blends as best as you can. And there is somewhat of an advantage if it doesn't blend completely perfect, because the sky doesn't look blended completely perfect either. But I'm going to take my time going over it and over it and over it and over it until it looks good enough. Make sure you're laying down a lot of alcohol from the ink in this case. Obviously, all of these would be much easier done if we're doing this digitally, but I'm kind of having a different approach here. For those curious, I'm going to be using this illustration as the cover for Apple Black Chapter 1.2, which you can also find in the app, because the app has an Apple Black Retro Pack that has Chapter 1, 1.1, and 1.2 available. Chapter 1.1 and 1.2 are the additional chapters that I added into Apple Black that I feel help with the pacing and just the overall feel moving forward with the series. And if you read the series prior to the addition of these chapters, and if you read it now, you kind of get a vibe of what I'm going for. I'll kind of have a video in the future addressing the improvements I made during the remastering of my volumes, so you guys can subscribe to stay tuned for that. Finishing this illustration, again, my eyes are going back and forth with the reference, just so I know what colors to use. Now, what happens when the light hits the character in this area, her face, and things like that, right? And, laying it down, especially traditionally, you don't want to make any mistakes, because your mistake could be final. You have to be really careful with the colors that you use. And so there was a little apprehension trying to use something that was really, really red on her skin, but I think it worked out pretty great. So reference sometimes can also help boost your confidence and just letting you know, okay, you're making the right decision. I mean, especially if your reference is a real photo, you're just overall more confident. You can get reference anywhere. It depends on what you're creating. If it's a photo, you can get it on Google, Pinterest, Behance. There are sites out there where you can get stock photos and you can pay for them as well. You can even get high quality photos with lighting and all of that, with top-notch photography, even on Instagram. And just studying those colors can help a great deal. Sometimes you might not even be drawing, you might be a photographer yourself, and studying other photographs of your favorite photographers goes a long way. Some of these same things apply to cinematography and film, because sometimes some of these colors are chosen or used and they have some kind of symbolic meaning behind them. You can do your research as to understand why. Like I said, it's not copying, it's also studying it, trying to put yourself in the shoes of the creator and to understand why they've made certain decisions. If you know why they've made the decisions and they do not apply to you, then you'd know not to use them. So I think the illustration looks cool. You know, after studying the reference, I know to put the lights in certain areas on her body, under her jaw, parts of her goblet, even though there isn't a goblet in the original reference. Because I understand the shape of my character, I know where to have the lighting from the pool hit, and I know where to have the heat and warmth from the red skies hit everywhere else. All the original colors are kind of subdued because of the main colors, red and green. I'm still not perfect at this. I still practice from time to time to make sure that it's solid. Again, the further we go back in the background, it gets even blurrier. That's why I'm not too concerned about the sharpness of the city silhouette in the background, because that's how it is in the reference as well. Also, some of the lights in the background are going to be very blurry, and I try to mimic that, and I think overall it looks good. If you like this video, if you like this illustration, and you want more videos like this, don't forget, United States, to smash that like button, subscribe button, and hit that bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Please go binge my other videos where I go into more detail about how I'm applying the alcohol-based markers to the paper, the decisions I make, tips, tricks, hacks, and all that good stuff. Check out those videos. You can also get 2 free months of Skillshare. Links to everything you could possibly need will be in the description. Leave comments if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer. It's Whyt Manga, and I'm out.